The Toolbox Killers, a nightmare in Southern California. Close your eyes for a moment and try to imagine the most disturbing criminal profile an FBI special agent has ever created. They've seen the worst of humanity: Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. Yet one individual stood out, a subject so profoundly, monstrously sadistic that a veteran FBI profiler, John Edward Douglas, described him as the single most disturbing individual he had ever studied. This man, along with his partner, earned a chilling nickname, the Toolbox Killers. And here's the most horrifying fact that anchors their legend. They didn't use guns or knives as their primary instruments of terror. Their weapons of choice were mundane, domestic objects. Things like pliers, ice picks, and sledgehammers. The very items you might find neatly stored in a toolbox in your own garage. These implements were turned into tools of unimaginable torture and murder, all within a terrifying 5-month spree in the summer and fall of 1979 in Southern California. This is the story of Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. Part 1. The Genesis of Evil. The year is 1979. Southern California is bathed in sunshine, a land of freedom, beaches, and boundless promise. But beneath that veneer of idyllic American life, a darkness was brewing. Born not in the shadows, but within the walls of a correctional facility. Lawrence Sigmund Bittaker and Roy Lewis Norris, two career criminals, found each other in prison. Bittaker, older and with a violent history stretching back to his youth, including stabbings and armed robbery, was the dominant, controlling personality. Norris, younger and serving time for rape, was the follower, the easily manipulated sidekick. They talked about kidnapping young women, taking them to remote mountainous locations, torturing them using a variety of instruments, and ultimately murdering them. They were building a manifesto of depravity. When they were released, Norris on parole in January 1979, and Bittaker just a few months later in April, their shared fantasy was finally unleashed upon the world. They were free. Armed with a chilling plan and in search of a vehicle, they settled on a white 1977 Dodge Tradesman van, a perfect, anonymous steel cage on wheels, complete with dark-tinted windows, making it an ideal mobile torture chamber. Part 2. The first tools are used. The spree began in June 1979. Bittaker, the mastermind, and Norris, the compliant accomplice, drove their ominous white van through the suburban sprawl of Los Angeles. They were hunting. Their first victim was Lucinda Lynn Schaefer, a vibrant 16-year-old girl. She was walking home in Redondo Beach when she accepted a ride from the two men, a mistake that cost her everything. They drove her to a remote area in the San Gabriel Mountains. The details of what followed, the multiple assaults, the torture inflicted with the items from their toolbox, the methodical brutality, are almost impossible to comprehend. They didn't just kill her, they systematically destroyed her. Lucinda's body was never found. Her disappearance was a chilling ripple in the community, the first sign that a predator was stalking the streets. The second victim, just 3 weeks later, was Andrea Hall, a 18-year-old hitchhiking in San Bernardino County. The pattern was horrifyingly repeated. The abduction in the white van, the drive to the desolate mountains, the agonizing torture, and the murder. Like Lucinda, Andrea's remains were not immediately recovered, further complicating the police investigation. It seemed as though the two killers were unstoppable, their methods leaving no trace but the gaping hole of a missing child. Part 3. Escalation: the tape. The time between the murders became shorter, the crimes more brutal. The thrill, for Bittaker especially, was in the escalation, in pushing the boundaries of human cruelty. Tape recorder. The tape recorder was Lawrence Bittaker's most chilling vanity. He wanted a memento, an auditory record of his power and his victim's terror. What was recorded on that tape is considered one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence in the history of American true crime. It captured the sounds of the girls pleading, the men's cold laughter, and the awful sounds of their final moments. Part 4. The Cracks in the Cage. 5 girls, 5 months. An arsenal of sadistic tools. The terror seemed endless. But every partnership built on pathology has a fatal flaw, and in this case, it was Roy Norris. Norris was the weaker link, driven by fear and dependence on Bittaker, but also riddled with an underlying terror of the death penalty. After the last murders, a massive police operation was underway. Detectives were frantically piecing together the few common threads: a white van, hitchhiking teenage girls, and a complete lack of physical evidence at the dump sites. The break in the case came not through forensics, but through an old acquaintance of Roy Norris. Part 5. The Trial and the Tape. The trial of Lawrence Bittaker was a watershed moment in legal history, not just for the sheer depravity of the crimes, but for the use of the audio recording. Roy Norris's testimony was instrumental. He detailed the fantasies they shared, the planning, and the sickening use of the tools: the pliers, the wire, the electrical cords, the ice picks. He walked the jury through the last hours of 5 innocent lives. But it was the moment the prosecution played the audio recording in the courtroom that forever sealed Bittaker's fate. The sound was so appalling, so inhumane, that it elicited a profound reaction. Jurors and even seasoned lawyers reportedly wept. The judge had to order a recess to regain control of the room. This was not a story of circumstantial evidence. This was the victim's last agonizing testimony played for all to hear. Lawrence Bittaker was utterly remorseless, maintaining a cold, arrogant demeanor throughout the proceedings. On March 24, 1981, a Los Angeles County jury convicted Lawrence Bittaker of 5 counts of murder and multiple other charges. He was sentenced to death. Roy Norris received his life sentence, never to be paroled. Lawrence Bittaker spent decades on San Quentin's death row, known as a cold, calculating prisoner. He was sometimes sought out by criminologists like Maura Brand, who spent years corresponding with him, hoping to glean any information that could lead to the recovery of Lucinda Schaefer and Andrea Hall's remains. Even in his final days, Bittaker toyed with the idea of revealing their locations, using the information as a last-ditch attempt at leverage, a final assertion of control over the victims and their families. He died of natural causes in prison in December 2019, taking the secrets of his 2 missing victims to his grave. Roy Norris died just 2 months later. The case of the Toolbox killers remains a chilling benchmark for sadistic serial murder. It is a stark reminder that some of the greatest evils are committed not by monsters from a horror film, but by men who weaponize the ordinary, turning a simple domestic toolkit into an emblem of pure, unadulterated terror. The casual, planned brutality shattered the illusion of safety in Southern California and forever altered the way people viewed 2 men in a white van. The story of the Toolbox killers is one of immense tragedy and unanswered questions. We've seen how their partnership enabled them to commit unspeakable acts, but it also became their undoing. I want to know what you think. Head down to the comments and tell us. Do you believe that Roy Norris, by testifying against Bittaker, was truly seeking justice or simply desperate to save himself from the death penalty? Should his plea deal have been granted? Lawrence Bittaker died without ever revealing the locations of Lucinda Schaefer and Andrea Hall. For the families of missing victims, is an admission of guilt or the successful recovery of remains more important for closure? The FBI profiler called Bittaker the most disturbing individual he ever profiled. What aspect of the Toolbox killer's crime, the use of common tools, the audio recording, or the planning, Do you find the most profoundly disturbing?
Luis Garavito was born in 1957 in Geneva, Quindío, Colombia. Like so many serial killers, his early life was a tapestry woven with pain and abuse. He was the eldest of 7 children, and his childhood was marked by intense physical abuse from his father. He dropped out of school early, a pattern of poverty and instability following him. Criminologists believe the shame, the isolation, and the rage from his own victimization became the engine for the horrific crimes he would later commit. His early adulthood was a revolving door of petty crimes, homelessness, and manual labor, a drifter with no ties, no fixed identity, and a profound inner darkness. This lack of identity was crucial to his future reign of terror. It allowed him to move seamlessly between Colombia's 11 different departments, crossing borders into neighboring countries, always one step ahead of fragmented local police forces. Garavito's victims were heartbreakingly consistent. Boys between the ages of 8 and 16, typically from impoverished backgrounds, often street vendors or homeless. He chose them with clinical precision, knowing that these were the boys whose disappearances would be slow to be reported or simply dismissed as runaways in the chaos of Colombian street life. His method was chillingly deceptive. Garavito would use a variety of disguises to approach his prey, earning him the nickname El Cura, the priest, in some areas. The breakthrough, ironically, came after one of Garavito's few failed attempts. In April 1999, he was arrested in Villavicencio on suspicion of attempted assault against a street vendor's son. He gave police a false name, but a sharp officer connected his face to the sketch of a suspect in a prior, decades-old case. Under intense interrogation, the carefully constructed facade of Luis Garavito crumbled. The torrent of confessions that followed stunned the nation and the world. He not only confessed to the most recent cases, but began listing towns, dates, and gruesome details that only the killer could know. Garavito led investigators on a grim, terrifying journey across the Colombian countryside, pointing out the mass graves he had created. The sight of dozens of child skeletons being pulled from the earth solidified the nightmare. Garavito, with a chilling lack of emotion, took credit for every single one. The prosecution was able to gather evidence for 189 murders in Colombia alone, making him, unequivocally, the most prolific serial killer and child molester in history. The question then became, how do you sentence a man for nearly 200 lives? The courts calculated the sentence to be 1,853 years and 9 days. But Colombian law at the time had a non-negotiable principle. The maximum sentence any individual could serve in prison, regardless of the number of crimes, was 40 years. The sentence was devastatingly undercut further by a policy designed to encourage criminals to confess and cooperate. Because Garavito had confessed, allowing the bodies to be recovered and families to gain closure, he was granted a sentence reduction of up to 50%. In effect, a man sentenced to nearly 2 millennia for 189 murders was facing the possibility of parole after less than 20 years. The national outcry was immense. The families of the 189 victims felt betrayed, their grief magnified by the perception that their children's lives had been devalued by a judicial technicality. The government was forced to rush to change the law. But for Garavito, the ex post facto principle meant he would be tried under the law as it stood at the time of his crimes. He was the beast, a confirmed mass murderer. Yet his legal timeline was shorter than that of a single murder in many other countries. For 2 decades, the shadow of Luis Garavito's potential release loomed over Colombia. Year after year, the possibility of him being granted parole for good behavior ignited national fury, with politicians and public figures vowing to block his freedom at every turn. His continued incarceration became a matter of national security and moral obligation, overriding the complex, reductionist clauses of the law. Gravito, who spent his years in the maximum security prison of La Tramacua, made several appeals for parole, claiming conversion to Christianity and showing what was certified by some as good behavior. Every request was met with fierce, popular opposition and was ultimately denied. The weight of 189 children's lives was too heavy for the judicial system to ignore, even if the written law suggested otherwise. In October 2023, Luis Garavito, the Beast, died in custody from cancer at the age of 66. He had served 24 years of his 40-year maximum sentence. For many of the victims' families, this was the only true certainty of justice they would ever receive, that he would never walk free again, and a judiciary's limitations. It is a tribute to the hundreds of lives tragically cut short, and a condemnation of the conditions that allowed one predator to operate on such a devastating scale. As we reflect on the case of the Beast, we are left with enduring, painful questions. First, Garavito intentionally targeted street children, the most vulnerable and often neglected members of society. Does the scale of his success expose a systemic societal failure to protect its poor and marginalized youth, allowing a killer to operate where law enforcement was least likely to look? Second, Garavito was sentenced to 1,853 years, but was capped at 40 years, with the chance of further reduction for cooperation. Where do you draw the line between a system that encourages confession and a system that offers perceived leniency to an absolute monster? And did the Colombian system strike the right balance? Finally, Luis Garavito died in prison, but many killers like him have walked free due to legal maximums. What legislative reforms, specifically regarding life sentences without parole, should nations adopt to ensure that a confirmed mass murderer never has the legal right to walk free again? We invite you to join the discussion. Please share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. How do we ensure the lives of these victims were not lost in vain? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow all of our deep dive documentaries. From background events